All right, everybody, welcome to a special episode of Locked On Avalanche and Locked On Blackhawks. We had a crossover with Jack not that long ago, but our season is finally here. The hockey season is among us. Games are going on as we are recording this, but for our teams, Wednesday is day one, and they're facing off. Avalanche raised the banner. Blackhawks are going to Blackhawk. So what's happened since the last time we all met up? We'll talk about that. And why not get into some predictions? We'll give our predictions for each division, conference finals, and Stanley Cup champions. It's always fun with Mr. Jack Bushman for Locked On Blackhawks. Let's get to it.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to a crossover episode of Locked On Avalanche and Locked On Blackhawks. Two teams facing off in game one for the brand new hockey season. And Jack, you had a special name for this season. What was it?
It's Bedard watch season, baby.
Bedard watch season for the Blackhawks. I mean, I guess if you got to have something to really go on for the season, I guess that's it for you guys. Why not have something to look forward to, I guess, right?
I mean, that's the goal here this season. I mean, the front office would never fully admit to it, but based on everything they've done in the offseason, the end goal is to be as close as possible to hopefully at the top, but at least getting one of the top players in this upcoming 2023 NHL draft that's gotten a lot of hype, and getting a player like that can change how fast this rebuild goes. So we'll see. That's the light at the end of the tunnel for Blackhawks fans with this season. That's about to embark tomorrow night. It's going to probably be rough, but hopefully the end result will be selecting Connor Bedard first overall in Nashville. And if that happens, I'll definitely be making a trip down there. It's an easy one to say yes to, right?
Absolutely. So, all right, a lot to get to today. Like we said, both teams opening night puck drop for the Avs and the Blackhawks. And we'll get to some predictions later on. But first things first, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. For Locked On Avalanche, you can follow us at LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, Locked On Avalanche Instagram, LockedOnAvalanche@gmail.com. And you can follow us on our YouTube channel as well. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Jack, why don't you throw out your socials as well?
Yeah, you can check out Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you get your podcasts. For social, you can find Locked On Blackhawks on Twitter at @L_O_Blackhawks. Same thing on Instagram. If you want to check out my personal account, you can find me at Jack Bushman 2.
Good stuff. All right, so before we get into what we expect from game number one, why don't we kind of just check in and see what's happened since the last time we met? Because we did a crossover, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago or something like that. The Bedard watch is going to be a thing all year long, as is your big trade pieces in Kane and Toews. Is just any news related to that? Anything change in that world of, this is likely going to happen, or maybe not?
It still feels likely that it's going to happen. I've said the trade deadline makes the most sense, but nothing has really changed. Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane have obviously been asked about it a few times, and that's not going to stop throughout, the way of the season. But all they've really said, nothing too surprising, basic hockey player talk. They're just happy to be here, put their heads down, get the season started, work hard, and then kind of when that time comes, then they'll make their decision. But they're not really saying all that much, or saying they're focusing on it at least. So nothing's really changed in that aspect. But at the end of the day, it still just makes the most sense for them to be moved. The Blackhawks could get some really good assets, especially for Patrick Kane and what he's still able to provide at 33, 34 years old. The Blackhawks would really benefit from that return. And as much as it would be awesome to see Kane come back and Jonathan Toews come back for year number 17 next year, the opportunity for the Blackhawks to go and get those assets, I think the front office is ultimately going to want to do that. Now, apparently, they're not going to ask Toews and Kane to waive those no movement clauses. That's going to have to come from them. But I feel like once the trade deadline is coming and, the team is going to want to capitalize on that situation, that's when the tough conversations are probably going to be had. So nothing really too groundbreaking there, kind of been the same for the last few months now, but the end result, them getting traded, I still think it's more likely than not. But as for the team as a whole, kind of just getting caught up since we last spoke, as you mentioned, about a month ago or something, we did a crossover. Just kind of a reiteration that this team is not going to be very good. The preseason was ugly, boys. I mean, the Blackhawks went 1-5. They scored 6 goals in 6 games. The power play went 1 for 26. It was bad. And it just a reminder of what we're about to go through for the next few months. One thing I will say, though, is one thing that's become clear since we last spoke is Kyle Davidson's plan. And there were some young guys who were on the cusp of, maybe making the NHL roster. Lucas Reichel, who was a 2020 first-round pick of the Blackhawks. There's a couple of young defensemen in that group as well. A good goaltender, Arvid Soderblom, who we think could be a really good key netminder of the future. Kyle Davidson's elected to send them back down to Rockford for the most part and get top minutes there. So there's kind of been this debate between Blackhawks fandom. Should we have the young guys be up at the NHL at this level, or should they be all together down in Rockford, probably playing in all situations, being the guys down there? Feels like Kyle Davidson is really valuing what the Blackhawks have in their minor league system this year. So I'm not going to see a whole lot of the top prospects in the lineup, at least the ones that have already turned professional. And that's what's going to be probably make this season even a little bit tougher to watch, because you're not getting those young flashes and like what we could see to be hopeful for in the future. Most of these guys on the Blackhawks roster probably aren't going to be around in 3 to 4, 5 years when this rebuild gets turned around. So yeah, it's especially starting the season with the Avalanche, man. I mean, I don't know who's making these schedules. They did it to us last year. Jack Johnson scored the opening goal of the season on a breakaway, his only goal of the season.
That was a beauty.
I know. Breakaway, giving Jack Johnson. They parted the Red Sea for him and just gave him the center of the ice. And we liked that goal so much, we went out and nabbed him in the offseason. But it's going to be a tough start for sure, starting out with this road trip on the West Coast, starting with the Avs. But again, we know this is just kind of a filler season. So I think Blackhawks fans just have to keep that in mind when watching this team and try to not get too angry and wind up screaming at your TV on a nightly basis, because it's going to be a long year if you're feeling that way.
Well, and all the talk around Chicago has been we're going after Bedard and we're trying to make this, we're going to try and build around him. But the last time a team tried to tank for a Connor was McDavid, and you see what he has when it comes to goalie play. What is Chicago doing to not try and copy what McDavid's having to go through? Because he really has he has nothing to hang his hat on when it comes to that achievement. Like he's getting the personal awards, but nothing to signify his legacy in the game when it comes to like Stanley Cups and dominant teams. How is Chicago going to address the goalie position? Because you don't hear a lot about Chicago's goalie position, and there's not a lot to write home about. I know everybody's trying to make the moves for those top 3 picks in the draft, but where is Chicago looking at goaltending?
Their goaltending position is actually in a pretty good spot. I already mentioned one guy, Arvid Soderblom. It was his first year over in North America last year, played professionally over in Sweden before coming over, and he had a stellar year for the Blackhawks minor league affiliate, the Rockford IceHogs, a very young team down in Rockford last year. I believe the IceHogs were the 4th youngest team in the AHL, and they kind of were on the wrong side of, they were getting outshot a lot because they just didn't have that experience on defense. And Arvid Soderblom facing 30, 40 shots a night was really incredible for just being 22, 23 years old. And if the Blackhawks weren't in this situation where they're in right now and have this very patient approach and want to make sure, if anything, the prospects are getting extra time to develop down in Rockford, Arvid Soderblom might be the best goaltender they have right now. Peter Mrazek and Alex Stalock are just kind of temporary fillers. So Arvid Soderblom, if the Blackhawks were in a different situation, he probably could be the backup this season, and they're super high on him. And then also a second-round pick in 2020, Drew Comesso. He's been the starting goaltender for Boston University. This is going to be his junior year. He's had a lot of good experience for a young goaltender. He played with the United States Development Program, has basically been the starter for BU each of his first 2 years, and he actually played for Team USA at the Winter Olympics this past year. And in 2 games, he only allowed 2 goals, won both of them. I'm really excited about Drew Commesso. He's going to be the guy this year for Boston. They're going to be riding him a lot, and I think if he has a really strong year, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to see him make the jump to professional hockey. So quietly, the Blackhawks goaltender position moving forward, I think, is in a really good spot. And, they're both still a little young at this point to know what we have for sure, but the potential that these guys have flashed at a young age, I'm actually super hopeful and super high on the Blackhawks goaltender position as a whole. We just kind of got to go through Peter Mrazek and Alex Stalock being there this year. That's just, someone's got to do this job, and they didn't really want to throw Arvid Soderblom under the bus with this team in front of them, and I honestly can't blame them. I think that was the right decision. But yeah, I'm actually pretty high on the Blackhawks future and net, all in all.
Do you think, kind of different way to look at the Toews and Kane situation? Do you think there's a possibility that they ride it out for the year, don't get traded, and see what happens? Like, see if the Blackhawks do end up with that first overall pick and get Connor Bedard. And then, you'd have to re-sign them, of course, because they're both unrestricted free agents. I feel like, they obviously love being in Chicago. I think if they hung around, if they got that first pick, got him, because not only would you have the first round pick, you have 2 picks in each of the first 3 rounds for the next 2 years. That's 12 players you're getting in the first and second round. So, yeah, I mean, I think people are really thinking like this is going to be a long haul for the Blackhawks. But if they draft right and get Bedard, and then I guess, like, could it be possible that Kane and Toews wait it out to see if that happens? And then if it's worst case scenario and they don't have him, they're like, okay, yeah, this is going to take a long time. Trade us. But if they get him, say like this might move along a little bit quicker than normal, we'll hang around.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And one thing before I get into that, I got to give credit to Kyle Davidson. In his first year as general manager, the Blackhawks had 11 picks in this year's NHL draft. And as you referenced, we have 2 picks in the first, second, and third rounds in each of the next 2 years, and potentially more coming on the way right. If he wants to go ahead and unload some of the assets they have right now, aka Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Max Domi, Andreas Athanasiou. The list kind of goes on and on throughout the Blackhawks roster. And yeah, there is the potential that maybe things turn around if they draft correctly, and a chance in this year to get a franchise-altering player, hopefully Connor Bedard. The tough part about that is I will say it is somewhat likely, because we've heard the Blackhawks front office say they're not going to be the ones to approach Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. When the trade deadline rolls around, and if Kane and Toews still haven't come to Kyle Davidson and had that conversation, it's going to get real awkward there, right? And I just wonder if the Blackhawks worry about not trading them at the deadline, and then ultimately they don't want to stay and they get absolutely nothing. Or if they trade them with expiring contracts, who knows what the market's going to be. The time to trade them might be the deadline. I feel like that's when they could get the best return. And again, the potential to turn this thing around is by getting those types of draft picks, getting multiple first round picks. And when you could trade a player like Patrick Kane to get that, at the end of the day, that's why I feel like the front office, they're never going to say it again, but they would prefer to trade Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. I won't say, it's out of this world that for that to happen. It could. I just think at the end of the day, this is a business, and that's a bad business move by the Blackhawks. If they wait till the end of the year and kind of roll the dice, I wonder. But to your point, I do think if the Blackhawks land the first overall pick and have a chance to get Connor Bedard, if Kane and Toews were still around at that point in the year, which again, that's the questionable part, it could help change their minds, but it would just put the Blackhawks front office business-wise in a very tough situation.
Yeah. And I think I have to correct myself, because I said if they wait it out and then they don't get the first round pick, they would say, trade me. They wouldn't need to trade him at that time because they'd be unrestricted free agents. They could just walk.
Exactly.
And then you get absolutely nothing in return. So yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you that a trade at the trade deadline is happening. I'm just trying to look at different angles where they could keep those guys, because I like when players stay in one city with one team for the duration of their career, because it doesn't happen a lot anymore. It happens more in hockey than any other sport, but it doesn't happen in hockey all that much, except for your superstars and stuff like that, which is great. But I just like seeing that. I like seeing a guy starting in his career in one spot. So I'm kind of just trying to find other ways for those two guys to potentially stay there. But if they don't want to, you hear a lot of Avalanche talk. Even Elliot Friedman was saying it on his show that the Avs are a very likely destination for either one of those guys. So we'll see. I mean, that is definitely going to be big news for the duration, until trade deadline, honestly. So, all right, let's hear from SimpliSafe, and then we will get into this game Wednesday night, game number 1, what to expect. But first, SimpliSafe, the numbers don't lie. And in the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe home security to protect their home. And you don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. And I know, because I genuinely use SimpliSafe, and we moved to the house that I am currently in right now about 4 years ago. And the first summer, there was burglaries going around my neighborhood on my block. And it turned out to be the kid who lives like 4 houses down from me. This teenager kid worked in the area. I live in a pretty good neighborhood. He was robbing, just going in their back doors. It literally was a freakish thing, but they caught him, and we were stocked with SimpliSafe. So I felt okay. Like, I felt like, my wife was pretty like on edge about it, and I get it, but I felt like, come in here, bro, do it. I dare you. And it never happened. And the good thing about SimpliSafe, they have 24-hour professional monitoring, and SimpliSafe's agent will call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home and you can't be reached. And you can even check your cameras on your phone. We're protected. I'm telling you, man, this stuff works. So the perfect system for your home. In just a few minutes, you can customize it at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. You save 20% off your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, game number 1 in Denver, Colorado. They will be raising the banner. I'm sure Blackhawk fans are going to be sitting there saying, like, when is this thing going to get over? I think it's just these banner raisings and commemorating the team that won the championship. They seem to go on like longer and longer and longer every year. And to be the opposing team to have to sit through that, you guys are probably going to be like, can we just play a hockey game? But I know I'm looking forward to that part. Kyle's looking, when you're the team that won it, you're looking forward to it. But once all that's done, that's in the past. And I'll ask both of you guys, how do you feel the Avalanche will come out? Do you feel like they're going to be, because sometimes getting caught up in that moment can be good, can be bad. I'd like to think that the Avs have been preparing for this, but sometimes you can't prepare for a moment like this, and the emotions might get the best of you. So, Kyle, what do you think? You think it might take them a couple minutes to get their legs and kind of forget about that and just get focused back on the game?
Yeah, absolutely. This almost sets up for one of those kind of trap games right out the gate. Like, the emotions are high. You also don't have Gabe Landeskog, the captain, out there, and you're still going out there. There's injuries on the team, so there's new faces. We've talked about it many times, like in the preseason, trying to find that cohesion, still trying to find your synergy and how the lines work and who works well. The goalie's getting in there, getting situated. And we just heard Jack talking about the Blackhawks and all of Connor Bedard, who's not even a member of the team yet. And everybody's talking about the Blackhawks going forward, but Patty Kane and Jonathan Toews are still in that locker room, and they're telling that team, hey, we could change the narrative of this season. It's not over yet. We can go out there and we can make a statement now. And they're going to go out there.
Right.
This is the best shot they got. Everybody has the same amount of wins and losses. Chicago could go out there, and if they beat Colorado on that emotional banner-raising night, that could change the momentum of a team. So you might see Chicago's best effort in game one, and Colorado could get out there all caught up in the emotion, get out there with a little bit of swagger, try and figure things out, and find themselves down. And then the goalie having to rely on a new goalie in a new situation. This could be a trap game. So it's going to be a very interesting watch, and not one that we should automatically start looking to the next game.
What do you think, Jack? I think with Chicago, they're in the driver's seat of spoiler. You know what I mean? And it's not to say that for game one, but no, like for a team that's raising a banner, you want to go out there and rain on the parade, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, like you're saying, not much is expected of the Blackhawks this year, but for at least one game, like those are kind of like Kyle said, maybe like momentum builders for a little while. And you can always look back to we should have not been in that game whatsoever. And we played spoilers. Those are the games that, you can always look back on and grow from.
Yeah, it's a dangerous position to be in when you feel like you have nothing to lose, really. And give credit to new Blackhawks head coach Luke Richardson. He's talked a couple of different times about this, and I think the players have reciprocated it well. The front office may be trying to tank, and they may be trying to do all that stuff, but us guys in the locker room, we're not just going to be mail it in here. I mean, that's
right.
Not how you work as a professional in this industry, and they're going to be trying to compete each and every night, trying to get better and better and better, and they're not going to just sit back and, they hear the expectations, but, they feel like they got something to prove, and it would be a massive statement on game one if they could show that they can even hang and just be competitive with a team like the Colorado Avalanche. So it's a big test right out of the start for the Blackhawks and their new head coach, Luke Richardson. As for my expectations for Colorado, I do think, those first couple of shifts, I think they're big for the Blackhawks because you might be able to catch some Colorado players daydreaming about what was last year and fond memories, and they're just kind of skating out there with nothing in their head. I think that's a big chance for the Blackhawks to set the tone early, but after that, once the Avs probably get a few shifts under their belt and realize, we're in the middle of a game here and not in a dream, it's probably gonna be tough for the Blackhawks, especially because one thing we talked about, or I referenced off air before we recorded, this defense for the Blackhawks tomorrow night is, they just have gotten no luck this preseason. Jake McCabe had to undergo surgery. He's not going to be in there in the preseason finale. Caleb Jones injured his shoulder. He's not going to be in there tomorrow. Alex Vlasic, who's one of our top young defenseman prospects, he blocked a shot the other day in practice. Sounds like he's not going to play tomorrow. Even Connor Murphy, who's just getting back from nursing some back injuries, literally today at the University of Denver at practice, took a shot right in the face and had to get stitches. It's like, oh my gosh, put these defensemen in bubbles out there on the ice right now because they're literally dropping like flies. But the Blackhawks decor tomorrow, it's going to be thin. You're going to see Alec Regula, who's a young guy with just about 20 games of NHL experience. Philip Rose will be making his NHL debut, it sounds like, and even Jared Tenorti, who the Blackhawks just claimed off waivers from the New York Rangers. It was his first day at practice today. Sounds like he's going to be in the lineup tomorrow because they're that thin. So
wow,
it's going to be tough for the Blackhawks defense. I'm already counting my blessings before I go to bed tonight, saying a quick prayer for Peter Mrazek tomorrow night because he could be in for one, fellas.
What do you think? You said, it's just been a disaster for the preseason for them, but was there anything good that stood out that you can kind of go into like this game one and say, like, if we can do this well, we got a chance?
I got one thing. It's the penalty kill. The Blackhawks penalty kill. It's been an issue for the last couple of years. They started the preseason with a stinker. They went 0 for 3 on the PK against the Blues. In their last 5 preseason games, they went 15 for 16 and looked a whole lot better. And if they don't let Colorado torch them on the man advantage tomorrow night, I think that goes a long way in helping them at least stay in the game. You can't let those offensive guys, even without Gabriel Landeskog, you know what Rantanen, McKinnon can do, Cale Makar, obviously. If you stop that group and don't let the Avs power play take over the game, I think that's one way for sure that will help the Blackhawks stay alive. That's really the only bright spot from the preseason. 6 goals in 6 games. The offense did not look good. They got shut out 3 times. They were given Max Domi and Andreas Athanasiou, probably the two biggest newcomers this offseason. They're giving both those guys an opportunity on the top line with Patrick Kane. They had their chances, but nothing really just could find the back of the net. Athanasiou's speed, I really am excited to watch him. I think he's going to get a lot of scoring chances, but it's kind of been the name of his game throughout his career. Like, his speed is going to give him opportunities, but what can he do with them? And in the preseason, he came up empty. Jonathan Toews honestly looked a little sluggish in the preseason. Power play went 1 for 26. I mean, it was bleak. It was bleak. So, yeah, not a whole lot to hang your hat on from the Blackhawks 6 preseason games. But as I mentioned, if they can have success on the PK tomorrow night, I think that's a lifeline to staying alive, because if not, that's when I think things can really unravel.
I tried to paint the worst case scenario for Avalanche fans, but everything Jack's saying, that trap game, it's making it a hard situation. Like, that's got to be so rough to go into your season with everything dropping. Like, what is the fans' like temperature going into this season? Are they also feeling that dire? Like, not watching games. Like, if you haven't caught every preseason game and you haven't kept track of every injury, how are the fans feeling about this season going in?
I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think there are the folks who fully understand the position the Blackhawks are in. And I used this word earlier. This is kind of just a filler season. Like, listen, you can't just not play the 82 games. You got to go out there and do it. Unfortunately, as bad as this team is going to be, you still got to go and play those games. I think fans understand the bigger picture that's in play here. And I think I'm hopeful that most of them out there have been impressed with what the Blackhawks have been able to do in year one of Kyle Davidson's rebuild. And throughout the summer, there were a lot of guys that they had as part of their 2022 NHL draft class who looked really good. And, I think given that Kyle Davidson is only going to add more and more picks here, I'm really excited for where the Blackhawks prospect pool is headed. And I think there are fans out there who get that side of it, but yeah, there's also people who are just downright miserable already and know it's going to be a rough ride. And I feel for them. Look, the Blackhawks did nothing to give these fans hope in the preseason, like nothing at all, really. So yeah, I mean, I get it. The one thing I hope fans understand is that we finally have a plan. That was step one, was actually having a plan, actually having a direction. And Kyle Davidson, all the things he said he was going to do, he's done thus far. And I really don't have any complaints about the job that he's done so far. And, the Alex DeBrincat trade, I don't think they got enough. But I will say the first round pick they got for him, they turned into defenseman Kevin Korchinski, and he had one heck of a preseason with the Blackhawks. I'm really stoked about that kid. And again, I think there's going to be more help coming with the ways that the Blackhawks are going to be able, I think, to get more picks this year. And if Kyle Davidson can restock that thing, I think there is a bright future for the Chicago Blackhawks. That's the part that I want fans to know, is we're finally on a path heading in the right direction. It's going to be a little bit of a slow process, but I like the start so far, and it is encouraging, even though what we watch on ice this year is not good.
Yeah, 6 goals in 6 games. I think that math checks out to carry the 1 goal a game.
Yeah.
Not very good. But yeah, I think for the Avs, I think they got to utilize the speed, and I think you're going to see a lot of holding on the Blackhawks, and just because the Avs are just going to be flying. And I think you're going to see some penalties come the Blackhawks way that are just kind of just because they can't keep up with them. This is what I just hope the Avalanche, they're playing so fast that the Blackhawks are just going to have a lot of holding and grabbing and pulling penalties. And but maybe that's the saving grace for the Blackhawks is the penalty kill so far, but we shall see. We'll see. Yeah, man, I don't know. Any prediction on the score? I mean, what's going to happen in this game? The Blackhawks are going to score 30 seconds into this game. You can almost guarantee it. You got all this emotion going on. The crowd's going crazy. The Avalanche have been known to do that, to give up goals early. It would not surprise me at all if the Blackhawks score on their first shift of this game. Having said that, though, any predictions on this game, and then we'll get into predictions on the season.
I was going to go with I'm stuck in between 4-1 or 5-2. Honestly, I might just go 5-1 because the Blackhawks scoring 2 goals.
Keep it one. I mean, they got one in every game, every preseason game.
It seems to be the hot commodity, a goal a game. That's what they're getting out of this offense right now. So I'm going to go 4-1 Avalanche tomorrow. I think the offense is just going to be too much for the Blackhawks. Maybe for Peter Mrazek keeps them around, but I don't see this offense having success against the Stanley Cup champions, even if they do have a new netminder tomorrow night.
What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, even though I painted the darkest timeline of how tonight will go, I have a feeling it's going to be a 6-1 game, 3 a frame, just consistent machine-like approach to game one and how they're going to approach the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be not a slow start in terms of speed of the game or pace of the game. I don't know. I mean, I can always be proven wrong. Obviously, his predictions, never 100%. But I don't feel like there's going to be a score in the first period. I think like the Avs are going to be just gripping the sticks a little too tight. You're going to be a lot of emotion going on in that arena, and I think they need a period to just get it out of the way. And then you'll start seeing some scoring in the second and the third. So they probably give up one. I mean, you don't really know what you have so far with Georgiev. But I think they give up one, but I think they score probably like 3 or 4. So I'm going to say 3-1 or 4-1. But it's not decided till late. I think it's maybe like a 2-0 game, and then maybe the Blackhawks score one and the Avs get another one to put it away late. But I think it's going to be the first game of the year is so tough just because team, it takes a while to get going in this league, in any league. So, and the Avs are notoriously slow starters to a season, but I think they're going to use that energy in the arena for good, obviously. But I just think it might take them a little while to hit the back of the net, at least. So we shall see. It'll be an exciting game. All right, for the rest of the league, we're going to kind of make our official predictions here. So when we look back at the end of the year and say like, okay, how right or wrong were we? This is the moment where we're going to select those out. So why don't we go division by division? We'll pick the 3 division winners, then the wild cards, and then we'll go to conference finals and then Stanley Cup champions. So let's start in the Atlantic. Let's start in the Atlantic. Yeah, why not? Alphabetical. What do you got, Jack, for your top 3 teams in the Atlantic?
I got Tampa Bay coming in as number 1. I do have a little concern about their defense losing Ryan McDonough and kind of just riding Victor Hedman, but at the end of the day, they still got all their core guys. I think that team's still ready to rock and roll and gave the Avs as good a fight as anyone last year. I mean, I expect Tampa Bay to be ready to do it again. This division's tough, though. I mean, I think Toronto's going to be up there. I don't have any faith in them in the postseason, but I do have faith in them in the regular season. I have them coming in as number 2, and then I have the Florida Panthers coming in as number 3. What do you guys got?
I think we're all in agreement with those 3 teams. I don't know about you, Kyle, but for me, I have those same 3. Just I have Toronto winning the division.
So do I.
Yeah, I think Toronto will win it. I think Tampa has completely bought into that. We just have to get into the playoffs, and I feel if things are kind of they're comfortable with a playoff spot, I don't feel like they really put the foot on the gas all that much. So I'm putting them at 3, not because I don't feel like they're a good team. They're a very good team.
Very fair.
They've bought into that mindset of we just got to get into the playoffs. So I think Florida finishes 2 and Tampa finishes 3.
I have my Florida-Tampa flipped. I have Tampa at 2 and Florida at 3.
Yeah, which I can totally see that too. So, all right, we're all in agreement with the 3 teams, but we all have 3 different outcomes for that. So that's interesting. We'll stay on the East Coast with the Metropolitan Division. What do you got for those 3, Jack?
I have the New York Rangers coming in at first, and I feel like if they get Patrick Kane, that's the team that's probably been linked to Kaner the most so far. Yeah. Colorado's obviously been in there too. I think New York has a really good chance here. I like them at number 1. I have Carolina coming in close at number 2. And then I have the Pittsburgh Penguins coming in at number 3.
Okay. What do you got, Kyle?
I have the New York Rangers. At number 1.
Oh, he's going Carolina. I know where he's going with this. I know because Kyle's East Coast team. I won't tell you who's Kyle's East Coast team is. I'll have you guess based on what he's about to say. It shouldn't be that difficult if he puts them in here. All right, go ahead.
Rangers 1. Carolina is number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fighting it. Yeah. Number 3.
Yeah.
The New Jersey Devils.
Take a guess. Take a guess on who it is, Jack.
Oh, what? In this division? The Devils?
In this
Exactly. This team is a lot better than you give it credit for. They've made some moves. They are very young. They've addressed the goalie position. Keep an eye out.
They are improved. A top 3 team in the division. I don't know if they are there yet. This is tough for me to go. See, I'm going like my East Coast team is the Rangers. So I kind of want to go with like my heart in that aspect, but my head is telling me Carolina. I think they're too good of a team. I think they finish. It's going to be a close race between Carolina and the Rangers. So that'll be 1-2. And yeah, I got to go same as Jack with Pittsburgh as 3. Could someone sneak in there? Yes, but I don't think it could be the Devils. It'll be a wild card team. Why don't we do those? We'll stay on the East Coast. We'll finish up the East Coast. Who are your wild card teams in the East Coast?
Starting with me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do like Boston. I still think Boston has enough to hang around, and I also think they're a team that's really going to be aggressive at the trade deadline to go and get another piece. So I think Boston could be right there. This is ridiculous. Is it 2 or 3 wild card teams? Why am I blanking right now?
Yeah, 2.
Okay, and then I also have I wouldn't rule out the Islanders. I think the Islanders are sneaky this year. They started last season with that massive road trip, really kind of just threw them off. But in the second half, they were a really good hockey team and still have a lot of those core guys that were around from their conference finals runs. Matty Barzal just re-signed. I think the Islanders could be a sneaky team to get back into the playoffs this year. I'm going with them.
Go ahead, Kyle.
In the words of the wise prophet Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. You had it half right. It's going to be Boston, but Columbus is going to be the other wild card.
Oh no way!
Oh no,
and Columbus.
I love this. This is. I love doing it. Yeah, go ahead.
They're two. We have got so comfortable with how we view New Jersey and Columbus. Columbus is literally built like the Islanders a couple years ago that we've always taken for granted, but they're always there churning that. They always score, they always win, they have good goaltending. That's exactly how Columbus is built. And with the addition of Johnny Hockey, that just takes them from being a heartbreaker and we lost that game to Columbus to now a playoff spot and annoying in a 7-game series. So keep an eye out for Columbus. They're building something there.
They're building, yes, they're building. It's not built. And they have, they are so top heavy. Like the depth on Columbus is just not there. So I don't know if they can hold up for a full season. We will see. What I want to see and what I think is going to happen this year is we're just going to have better races in the East. Mm-hmm. This was pretty much, we knew what the playoff teams were almost by the new year. And the distance between the second wildcard team and the next team going up to get that wild card was like 20 points. And I think it was Detroit.
Yeah.
It was such a discrepancy. So I think you're going to have a better race that lasts longer this year, which is I'm really looking forward to because that was who I was talking about, Jack, was the Islanders. I think the Islanders are fine. And a lot of people just jumped off that bandwagon. But yeah, the start of that season to not have a home game until like mid-December, it just ruined your season. So now that that's out of the way, I think the Islanders will be back. I think the Islanders can get a wild card. And man, like I love looking at some of these other teams. I do like the Devils. I think the Devils can compete for that second wild card team. I'd like to see what Detroit does this year. I think Detroit can be closer. I think you want me to go out on a limb here? I will give the second wild card, and maybe this isn't so much of going out on a limb. I'll give the second wild card to Ottawa. I think Ottawa is immensely improved. And if they don't get it, they'll let it slip through their fingers in the last week or two of the season. But I'll give it to them right now. So, and I do think the Devils are right there. But I think it's just going to be a better race to watch in the East than it was last year. So I'll give my 2 wild cards to the Islanders and the Senators. So let's move over to the West. We'll save our division. We'll save the best for last. But we'll go to the Pacific. What do you got for your top 3 in the Pacific, Mr. Jack Bushman?
I had a tough time picking this one. I have Edmonton coming out on top. I think Calgary's going to give them a good run. I have Calgary coming in at 2, and then I got Vegas at number 3. The rest of this division is really tough to look at.
Pretty brutal. Yeah. What do you got, Kyle?
Calgary, number 1. Edmonton, Anaheim.
Ooh.
I don't believe in Vegas.
I don't either.
The Kings are undercooked. They're not there yet. The Ducks have veterans and they have youth, and they have, I think, just because of what they have to deal with in the division, Anaheim is built, and they'll find themselves at the 3 spot. They're not going to play for that 3 spot. They're just going to be there because of the condition of the rest of the division.
That could be true. They kind of like just get a spot by default.
Yep.
But I think Calgary will be number 1 in this division. Edmonton will be number 2. And I think that will be a close race as well. But I do like Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles is the 3rd team here. And it's a little bit of both, like what you're talking about, Kyle. It's a little bit of like they are a good team, and they're a team like on the rise, and they're playing in a division where it suits them a little bit better. You put them in really any other division, and they're still a good team, but they might struggle a little bit more to gain a playoff spot. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. They're good, and they benefit from being in the Pacific. So I think that's your 1, 2, 3 for me in the Pacific. And then we go to our Central. What do you got there, Jack?
Got Colorado coming in at number 1. I think I've done crossovers with basically everybody in the division and haven't heard anyone to say anything otherwise. So I'm going Colorado at number 1. Still got the squad to run it back. I do have questions about their goaltending, but I also had questions about that last year. And, they went out and won the Stanley Cup. So not worried about them winning the division. 2, I have the St. Louis Blues. And I'm sneakily really on the St. Louis Blues this year. I think if Colorado doesn't come out of the Western Conference, I think it's St. Louis. I think they have the team to do it. If Jordan Binnington can get back on his A game consistently, I really like the St. Louis Blues team. And look, they were 4 seconds away from that game 6 going to overtime, and who knows what happens there. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I like St. Louis at number 2, and then I've gotten grief over this through those Central Division crossovers. I got Dallas coming in at number 3. I don't know why. They give me sneaky vibes. No one's expecting them. I just like their defense, and I like their goaltending. And at the end of the day, I can count on that more than I can for some other teams. So I got Dallas coming in at number 3.
It's not as bad as Columbus, but you never know. I agree with you. Dallas just finds ways sometimes to get in there. So all right, go ahead. What do you got, Shaggy?
I talk about how Chicago could possibly win tonight's game, and he comes on here and mentions the name of Jordan Binnington on this show. My goodness. Anyway, Colorado clear number 1. And you know what? Because it's just predictions. I feel like Nashville might hit that number 2.
I'm with you.
Nashville at number 2. And by the slimmest of margin, this is where the race is going to be in the Central. I have Minnesota above St. Louis, but it is going to be, a fight.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about the Central is when we're talking about the Pacific, I don't think any wild cards come out of the Pacific. I think it's those top 3 teams, and the Central just beats itself up. It's so tough. Yeah, Colorado, you'd have to think would be at number 1, and like everything else, with the exception of Arizona and I'm sorry, Jack, but Chicago, it's tough. But I'm with Kyle. I like what Nashville's got. I think they're going to be a tough team, and when you have a solid goalie like they do, I feel like they are going to sneak into that second spot. For 3, yeah, I mean, obviously it's between, for me, Minnesota and St. Louis. It's a coin flip. I'm going to go with Minnesota, but I mean, it's probably going to be a single point that differentiates them too. So because of that, I think the 2 wild cards for me are
Dallas and St. Louis.
St. Louis, and I mean, yeah, it's got to be. I mean, Winnipeg. We're not really talking about Winnipeg. I don't think a lot of people were high on them last year, and I think because they laid such an egg, people aren't jumping back on that bandwagon. It's almost like the Islanders. Like, we'll give the Islanders another shot, but for Winnipeg, people don't seem to be doing that for them. It's almost like we gave you the shot last year and you fumbled it, so now we got to see more. So yeah, I think. Yeah, I think it's St. Louis and Dallas that get the wild cards.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I think the 2 wild cards are coming out of the Central, and I think it's going to be a dogfight from 2 through 6. Arizona and Chicago don't expect to be in that race, but it's really up for grabs. Yeah. I have my 2 wild card teams being Nashville would be 4th in the Central, and then I have Minnesota actually coming in at 5. I have a couple questions about Minnesota.
Okay.
Marc-Andre Fleury, I know on his A game is awesome, but when he's not, there were nights where he was susceptible with the Blackhawks last year, and we saw it at times with Minnesota in the playoffs. I have concerns about him being the number 1 guy all season long and in the playoffs. And I also feel like there's a resurgence coming from Minnesota as a whole. One stat that stood out to me last year, they led the league by a mile in goals with the extra attacker. And while that tells you they're a good team and they can find ways to overcome adversity, I agree. You could take that angle too. I also feel like there were times where nights where they could have been beat and came out with a W. And you can flip that, like I said, both ways. But I feel like they're going to fall a little bit. I just have some questions about Minnesota, but I do think they still end up getting a playoff spot because the Central Division is just so tough.
So then what would your wild cards be then? You'd have for Kyle.
Oh yeah, it was Dallas, St. Louis.
It's Dallas, St. Louis, yeah, and that's the beauty of like the NHL is, Jack's got Minnesota as the second wild card team, but they could easily finish second in the division, and a lot of people are thinking that they could push Colorado to take the division. That's what's awesome about this sport. And that's what's great about this division is it's very, very tough. So. All right. So as far as conference finals goes, what are you thinking for your Eastern Conference final matchup, Jack?
Oh man, I'm going with. I got the Rangers and Tampa Bay.
You think Tampa's going to make it that far? Oh, okay. All right.
I do.
Yeah.
I think they're built for that. And you referenced a great point earlier by saying they know they just got to get there. It actually kind of reminds me of the old Blackhawks. Like, you just got to get into the playoffs. They didn't care what seed they had. They knew they had the team to do it. The guys that are in the locker room, they know what they're capable of. I feel like Tampa Bay is primed for playoff hockey more so than anything else. So I got them going back again.
All right. What do you got, Kyle?
I got New York and I got Toronto.
Oh, okay. Savage.
I mean, we've talked about it, Jack. Like Kyle and I have talked about it. Like the whole like first round thing. Like they're gonna get out of it at some point. Is it in their heads? Yeah, they're human. It definitely is. But is it this year? It remains to be seen. I don't. It wouldn't surprise me if they do get it to the conference finals. They're a good team. They have one of the best players on the planet. You know what I mean? And it's just only a matter of time before they get out of that first round. But for me, I don't know. I think Carolina will be there in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I don't know, like as much as I like the Rangers, I do think they're once you get to the playoffs, a lot of things start to show, and depth is one of it. And while the Rangers have okay depth, I don't think it's where it needs to be to make a deep playoff run. So I can't put them in the Eastern Conference Finals this year. I got to go Toronto too, man. I do. I think it's Carolina, Toronto in an Eastern Conference Final. So, and then in the West, who you got Western Conference Final?
I have Colorado running it back again. I honestly don't think there's, I don't want to put this heebie-jeebies on you guys. I just don't think there's too much of a challenge in the Western Conference. Now, there are teams that can give them a run, no doubt about it. And it's playoff hockey. Literally anything can happen. That's the beauty of playoff hockey. I feel like the real challenge for the Avs is on the other side. Like the best teams in the league, besides them for the most part, well, the Central Division will be competitive. They're mostly Eastern Conference teams. So I got the Avalanche going back, and I have Calgary making it to the conference finals as well. I think they're just better suited for playoff hockey than Edmonton is.
I'll make it easy because that's the exact same one that I have.
That's exactly what I got. The Avs will go back to back, having to go right through Nas.
Yeah. I mean, that was the matchup that everybody thought was going to be last year, and then Edmonton came out of nowhere and then took care of business in that series. So, and then our Stanley Cup Final. Who you got and who you got winning it, Jack?
I got Colorado going back to back. I do. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the show. But I have them playing the Rangers in the Stanley Cup. And I think the Rangers are going to get Patrick Kane. I think that's a place he would really enjoy going to. A big city, goes and plays with Artemi Panarin. And he raved about how much he loved playing with him. And you could tell, based on what they did on the ice. All in all, business-wise, I feel like that's the avenue that makes the most sense for Patrick Kane. I feel like that's a really good spot for them to be. And I know it might be a little bit much to ask this Rangers group to go and do it when they still have a little bit of youth there, but they were pretty darn close last year, man. I think a big deadline acquisition like Patrick Kane could help them get over the hump, but I do think they're going to ultimately fall short to Colorado again.
So do you feel that Rangers pick is predicated on them getting Kane?
I was kind of thinking that in my head, kind of took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay.
I feel like that's what really could help boost them, but I do like the Rangers team even without Patrick. Yeah. But I think that definitely could help, and I think a lot of people agree.
All right. What do you got, Kyle? Avs and who?
Toronto. I feel like once Toronto gets past that first round, that's a cheat code. That's DK mode. That team believes in itself. They did it. So they're going to be unstoppable. There's no doubt in Toronto once they get past that first round. So they will be in the Stanley Cup.
In 2028.
It's what the Avs, it was they couldn't get out of the second round. And then once they did, it was just like, we're fine now. You did see just like the monkey get off their back and, back it up another round for Toronto. And you get out of the first round, it could just be all gravy from there. So, and then I'm assuming you have the Avalanche over Toronto in the final.
Of course.
Okay. I'm going to go Avs in Carolina in the final. I do. I think Carolina is one of those teams that's just knocking on the door. They're oh so close, and I think they just get over that hump this year. And then I think obviously the Avs take it. But what I wanted to do, Kyle, was just not to act like we're homers and because we host the show that is the defending Stanley Cup champions. If it's not the Avalanche, are you going Calgary?
I'm going Calgary and Toronto. I will have Calgary beating Toronto.
So no matter what, so whoever your Western Conference Final team champion is
it's one thing to get there, but I think Toronto runs out of gas when they get there.
I'm actually in that same boat. If it's not not Colorado, excuse me, I'm going St. Louis. I'm going dark horse.
Wow. Okay.
I
love it.
If they were close to slaying the dragon last year, if they could do it this year and they get out of the Central Division, look out for them. I think if anyone can beat the Avs in the playoffs out of the Central Division, look out for them the rest of the way. But if it's not Colorado, I'm going St. Louis, and they will beat the Rangers in the Cup.
And they beat the Rangers. Okay. Yeah, if it's not Colorado, obviously Calgary for me. And then if it's Calgary, Carolina, that could be a really good series. I would say that goes 7, but for the sake of making a prediction, if it's Calgary and Carolina, I will go Carolina. If it's Avs, Carolina, obviously I go Avalanche. So write them down, revisit this at the end of the year. And you know what we'll do, Jack? Someone's got to write these down. And then we'll do a end of the year summary and kind of go over everything that we predicted here and see who was the best at predicting, and whoever gets some award, which I have yet to determine what it is. So
love it. I'm all
All right. All right, man. So there you go. There's everything to get you guys ready for this season when it comes to how we feel it's going to go. Honestly, good luck this year, man. I'm not just saying that to say like hopefully. What's that?
I'm gonna need it.
No, I mean, there's always good things you can pull out of a season, even when it's a dumpster fire of a season. We went through it a couple years ago, and the turnaround was like that, and look where they are. So there's always some good things to pull out of even the worst of seasons. So, and it's hockey. So enjoy the season, and we will obviously be catching up with you all throughout it. So why don't you throw out there one more time where people can catch you on your social medias?
Absolutely. Hey, and best of luck to you guys as well. We're on two very different journeys here, but I wish the Colorado Avalanche luck this season. For anyone listening, well, I guess this will be my show too, but for anyone out there wanting to follow, you can find Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you get your podcasts. You can find the show on Instagram or on Twitter at @L_O_Blackhawks. For my personal, check out @Jack Bushman too for all things in the name of sports.
And follow Locked On Avalanche, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, Locked On Avalanche Instagram, and of course on our YouTube channel. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day, everybody. That is always appreciated. Enjoy the season. For Mr. Jack Bushman from Locked On Blackhawks and Mr. Kyle Shaggy Von Doom Sullivan, I am Chris Micieli of Locked On Avalanche. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.